Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. Daren Martin.
One more time, Allison Forsyth. I mean, she flew a plane for the first time for y'all. You got to give her some credit for that. So speaking of planes, pilots will tell you that one of the absolute toughest maneuvers that you can possibly do is an aircraft carrier landing. So picture this, 54,000-pound aircraft. You're coming in at 150 miles an hour. You've got 500 feet of runway space. Now, if you're not a pilot, that's not a whole lot. Not only that, but it's the only runway that is a moving target. So as you're coming in many cases, that target is moving as well. Those pilots have 4 arresting wires that they need to catch one of them before they go off the end of the plane. And that arresting wire is going to take them from 150 miles an hour to a dead stop in 2 seconds. As if that's not enough pressure, it's a $35 million toy that they are actually playing with and flying into that. So actually, if you want to see something kind of interesting, go watch some of the worst disasters in that and some of the planes just going off the ship and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So difficult maneuver. I was doing some culture work for a large defense contractor. I was flying out there 1 week a month for about a year and a half. And so I'm sitting there and they're telling me this story. They actually built multi-million-dollar big box simulators for the Navy and for the Air Force to use to train their pilots. Because if you know, unless you're Allison, pilots actually have to go to years of training and school, and then they finally get in a flight simulator. Allison just jumps in a plane and starts flying, okay? But that's not the typical route. So they have these multi-million-dollar big box flight simulators that they build and sell to the Department of Defense. And they were telling me about being out at a trade show. 10-year-old kid comes up and says, "Hey, I'd like to give it a try." So the guy's like, "Okay, son." Yeah, he's kind of laughing a little bit. Get in, and he says, "Okay, so let me acclimate you to kind of the controls." And he goes, "This does this, and this says, yeah, I know. This is the that, and this does this thing." The guy's like, "Okay." He says, "So what do you want to do? What would you like to give a try?" He says, "I want to do the aircraft carrier landing." The engineer that is running the machine says, "Son, that's a really, really tough maneuver, even for experienced pilots. Maybe we should pick someone." He's like, No, I got it." So he gets this kid up in the air, and the kid's kind of flying the plane, and he's coming around for his landing. He's going too fast, too slow. For whatever reason, he decides to do a flyby. He just decides to wave that off and take another crack at it. So the guy starts telling him, "Hey, son, we've got an easy button. This is a really tough maneuver. Even seasoned pilots have trouble with this." He's like, No, I got it. So he comes back around. This time he's too high, he's too low. Whatever the case, he decides that he wants to abort that landing, and so he does another flyby. Guy starts back in on him. "Hey, we have an easy button. It's okay, no shame. Just let me hit the easy button. I'll help guide you." He's like, No, I got it. 10-year-old kid, multi-million-dollar flight simulator, sold for huge dollars to the Department of Defense. He comes back around the third time and totally sticks the landing. So they're telling me the story, and this is the look on my face. Okay, and it's not a look of, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe the 10-year-old was able to do that." I was thinking about them. I was thinking about the company, and I'm going, "You guys know you're in trouble, right?" Because I said, if I were y'all, I'd be laying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning going, nobody's going to pay millions of dollars for a multi-million-dollar big flight simulator that a 10-year-old just stuck the most difficult maneuver in. So why was he able to do that? Of course, you know the answer. It's that thing that you don't want your kids doing, but video games. He grew up on video games. So I was telling this to one of the pilots at the company, and he said, "Oh, well, that's all well and good, but wait till his butt's on the line. It's not the same thing." And I started grinning. This was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, by the way. And I started grinning, and I said, 10-year-old kid, do you honestly think that by the time he's old enough to be doing this, that he's actually going to be in the plane? A little thing called Unmanned Aerial Vehicles. And actually, I just heard last week that the Blue Angels just announced. Anybody familiar with the Blue Angels? Anybody ever seen the Blue? Okay. good. I saw them in Cheyenne last year, just amazing. They're the Navy flying group that flies super close to each other. They do all these crazy maneuvers, and they're just fascinating to watch, such precision. I just heard that by the year 2018, the Blue Angels will be completely unmanned. They will be flying in other ways. So the defense contractor that I'm talking about could not imagine a world in which a 10-year-old could completely master, have the hand-eye coordination, have the ability, have the knowledge, have the skill set to master one of their most difficult maneuvers. They could not imagine a world in which a pilot would not actually be in the plane. So if you cannot imagine a world where the nature of all you have known is fundamentally changed, then you will not see the future coming, and that future will crush you. Okay? Boy, that's a really solid way to start off, right? Is everybody feeling good about right now? People are going, dude, we just had this very hopeful message from Allison. Well, I'm not a harbinger of bad news. I'm actually a harbinger of good news, because I'm going to talk about how do we avoid that. The reality is that scores of people down through history have made very bold predictions in spite of their ability to predict and know the future. Voltaire said it was impossible for man to ever travel at speeds of 30 miles per hour. Now, raise your hand. How many of you get up to 30 just getting out of your driveway? Come on, be honest. There's a few daredevils out there, I know. I guarantee you Allison's one of those. Ken Olsen, president and founder of Digital Equipment, said there is no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. Yeah, okay. What about in our pockets? This is a Western Union internal memo from 1876. This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. Nice job, Western Union. This is a fun one because of who said it. There's not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. It would mean that the atom would have to be shattered at will. Guess who? Albert Einstein. Just to point out that even really, really bright people can mispredict the future. And last but not least, a Boeing engineer after the first flight of the 247, which if you don't know is a twin-engine plane that holds 10 people, made this bold proclamation: there will never be a bigger plane built, okay, than a 10-seater. You want some more modern-day versions? We will always, always be dependent on oil. Now, I know that is true, and that's a fact because the CEO of a large oil and gas company told me that. Not that he had a vested interest in that. We will never travel at the speed of light. Impossible. Teletransportation is not possible. I have a friend that was talking to a very bright guy from MIT, and the guy said, hey, what do you think the next big deal is? And he said, made a few guesses, and the guy said that in our children's lifetime, we will see the teletransportation of matter, and in our children's lifetime, we will see the teletransportation of people. Think about that. You want to have dinner in Paris tonight? Boom, beam me up, Scotty, you're there. And I just read recently, and I don't understand this stuff, I know just enough to be dangerous, but my son, much brighter than I am, was telling me that they just had the first kind of teletransportation of a quantum particle. I'm sure that's not exactly right. We will never inhabit other planets. Computers will never be smarter than people. The Cowboys will never win another Super Bowl. Okay. Of all those bold predictions, that one might actually be the one that, you're going to put your money on. Now, hey, all you haters out there, I'm from Dallas, so I'm in the family, I can say that. If you want to be laughed at in the future, if you want people to be reading your name on a list like this, then make some bold prediction and use the words never or not possible. Think about the shifts that we've seen in our world, that we've just seen in the last 20 years. Many large, dominant, very successful companies could not imagine a different future and never saw what was coming with devastating consequences. Picture in your mind, think of a company that at one point was dominant in their industry. I mean, they completely own their space, and they're either no longer in business or functionally no longer in business because they have just decreased in market share. I bet there's probably, how many of you have 2 or 3 that come to mind just thinking about that? Absolutely. So I'll give you a couple examples. Kmart never imagined that an upstart dry goods reseller was in a little plane with his son flying over their parking lots, counting the cars so he would know what the competition was and what he had to do to overcome that. Kmart never saw Walmart coming until it was way too late. At their peak in June of 2006, when they were the most visited website in the United States. Any guesses? 2006, most visited website in the United States. They had a valuation of $12 billion. Should have sold. They had no idea that a couple of guys in a dorm room in Harvard were going to come up with something, Facebook, that was completely going to put them, for the most part, out of business, that was going to topple them and reinvent social media forever. Remember going to the video store? Who remembers going to the video store? Come on, we all did it, right? And it was a weekend activity. Sometimes if you were kind of bored or say had sick kids, you went to the video store in the middle of the week. But in late 2004, with 60,000 employees and 900 retail outlets, the leadership of Blockbuster could not imagine the customers would stop streaming to their stores. And then Netflix audaciously started mailing DVDs to consumers, started building this other market. Now, this is an interesting story because you've got two people in kind of the same space, but visioning the future in a very different way, one to their demise and one to their huge success. So Netflix starts mailing DVDs to people's homes. And then ultimately they go beyond that. They start inventing sort of this streaming model, and then they go from that ultimately to starting to create their own content. Any binge watchers of House of Cards? Any? Okay. So they have continuously reinvented that industry. Blockbuster, in the meantime, is defunct, no longer around, because they failed to see into the future. So it's interesting because Blockbuster was actually slow to move to DVDs back in the day. They thought they had such a great thing going with VHS. And this is what, you want to talk about arrogance, this is what the CEO of Blockbuster said about Netflix when they were talking about Netflix. They're nobody. Okay, I have news for you. Whether it's good news or bad news depends solely on what you decide to do with it. You can be Voltaire, making ridiculous declarations. You can be Kmart and get steamrolled by a future you don't see coming, or, and everybody in this room has this opportunity, you can be Netflix, daring to drive a radically different reality that is not coming. This is not future speak, it is here. A radically different reality that is here. So say this, I will not be Voltaire. Say it with me, I will not be Voltaire. Boy, that was really weak. Come on. I will not be Voltaire. Okay, if you want to be Voltaire, you can say, I will be Voltaire now. That's fine. The news is everything is different. Nothing is the same, and there are no markets, not a single market, that are untouched by the new reality that is our world. We're living right now in a liminal moment. In a liminal moment. Now, what does liminal mean? It's a time of tension, extreme reactions, and great opportunity, a liminal moment. So think about some of the great inventions down through history that changed history. You've got the Gutenberg press. The Gutenberg press comes along, and before then, you had to rewrite books by hand if you wanted to reproduce them. All of a sudden, the Gutenberg press is created, and now you can mass produce information and spread it throughout the world. It was a deal changer. Think about the telephone, the ability to pick up that phone and call another person, an absolute deal changer. Think about the airplane, our ability to fly, opened up the world, opened up travel, opened up all sorts of industries. The Industrial Revolution, when we went from living in farms and kind of that agrarian society and started to move to much more of an urban setting because people were working in factories, and the huge shift that took place with that. Think of one other great invention through history. Turn and tell somebody one other great that I've left off. Just real quick. You got 3 seconds. Tell somebody else one. Or you can tell me. Okay. Pre-internet. What was that? Recording of music. Yes, we have any audio files out here. How great is that to be able to listen to music over and over again? So we've got all these inventions down through history, but if you think about it, you lump all of those, including the Industrial Revolution, the Gutenberg press, the airplane, all those, put all of those in one big category, take them all, multiply them times 1,000,000, and that's the shift and the change in the world that I believe we're living in. I think, people look back on 1920s Paris for the arts and go, what an incredible time. They were seeing so many greats and so much cool stuff happening. I really believe our future generations, our kids and our grandkids, are going to look back on this time that we're living through and go, oh my goodness, you guys went through some major shifts. It's been estimated that in the next 5 to 7 years, over 4.6 billion, with a B, new internet users will be coming online in the next 5 to 7 years. That represents the largest emerging market that we have ever seen, 4.6 billion new internet users. In 1898, let's go back a little bit, the first International Urban Planning Conference convened in New York. And they got together, and there was one topic that was on everybody's mind. It was a really big issue. And it was a problem that they were trying to solve because it was just taking over their cities. It was the problem, you might imagine, of manure, horse manure to be exact. In New York, in 1900, the population of 100,000 horses produced nearly 1,200 metric tons of horse manure per day. In addition, each horse produced nearly a liter of urine per day, and guess where all of that was going? Right into the streets. So you can imagine the vermin and the filth and just what they were living with and just, disgusting. The Times of London in 1894 estimated that in 50 years, every street in London would be buried under 9 feet of manure. Not a very pretty sight. So the doomsday panic mongers were wringing their hands, proposing draconian solutions. Sound familiar? Until the new world arrived in the form of streetcars and then mass-produced automobiles, and that problem with horse manure went completely away. It was a new day. It was a liminal moment, and liminal moments change everything. What emerged from that little liminal moment was not just a new industry, it was a new way of life. Some people caught on board with that and survived and thrived in the futures, and others got washed away, seeing their industry disappear forever. We're living in the largest liminal moment ever to occur. Okay, so business as we know it is over. What has changed? Basically everything, but let me give you a few. For starters, you know this by now, but customers are now business partners. So I was having some of the best pizza ever, and I'm a meat lovers kind of pizza guy, okay? It's one of the frou-frou ones with, tomato and, pineapple. I don't know, some of you put pineapple on your pizzas. Give me the meat lovers. The more meat you can load on this thing, the better. And this was just one of those fantastic pizzas. I mean, it was crispy and crunchy, but soft and gooey and everything you could just want in a pizza. And it was loaded with toppings. And I'm just sitting out there enjoying it at this fairly new restaurant in the Dallas area. This guy comes around, introduces himself. He's the owner. He says, hey, what do you think? I said, man, this is awesome. This is some of the best pizza. He's like, well, thank you very much. I said, hey, can I give you one piece of business advice? I'm a business consultant and speaker. I can't turn it off. He's like, sure. I said, so I'm looking around in here, and I'm looking on the walls. I can't find the name of your restaurant anywhere. And I said, listen, in today's time, this is really important that you have the name of your restaurant up because people want to post, they want to use social media, and I don't know how to mention you in this app I'm using called Foursquare. He says, well, what's Foursquare? I'm like, oh, okay. So if you're not familiar, anybody, who's familiar with Foursquare? Anybody? Okay. It's kind of shifted recently, but back in the day, Foursquare was an app that you use. You would check in, you would kind of let other people know where you were, then you would list, tips and things. So I said, well, it's this app that lets people kind of check into your restaurant, share some thoughts and so forth. And you're like, oh, okay, interesting. So I pulled it up and I said, hey, look, this guy right here, you see this picture? He goes, yeah. I said, that's the mayor of your restaurant on Foursquare. He's like, I don't even know that guy. I'm like, well, you maybe should, because he checks into your restaurant more than anybody else, and he promotes you and does all the stuff. Next time you see that guy, you should probably buy him a drink when he comes in. He's like, actually, I think I saw him in here the other day. I'm going, okay, this is working, right? So then I said, oh, cool, you've got like 4 tips here. 4 people have left some comments. Let's go see what those are. Much to my chagrin and his dismay, we open up those comments, and they all 4 basically said the same thing. Service is terrible. Horrible customer service, rude staff. These people are not friendly and nice at all. And I'm reading this, now picture right there in front of this business owner, it's as if I just told him his baby is ugly, right in front of him, right? And he's got this look on his face, and I'm kind of quickly trying to close out the app. You know, don't pay attention to any of that. No, the point is, pay attention to that. I got a Facebook invite to add him as a Facebook friend like 2 months later, and I said, okay, this guy's rolling now. He's starting to think in these terms. So I got some good news and bad news about that. The good news is your customers are talking about you more than they ever have. The bad news in some cases is your customers are talking about you. And it's all based on what they're saying. People have tried to shut down that conversation. Wrong tactic. Here's a bad strategy. Go to war with your client. There's a great story in What Would Google Do about Dell computers going to war with their consumers and saying, y'all are wrong, you don't know what you're doing, that's not really the problem, until they started to see market share and their stock market price drop dramatically until they started saying, hey, talk to us, tell us what's going on, we want to partner with you. So customers are now business partners. The world is flat, the company is flat. If anybody's read the book, The World is Flat, the world has opened up in amazing ways over the most recent years with the internet and other things. Traditional communication patterns are increasingly ineffective. Traditional management models are increasingly ineffective. How many of you saw just a week or two ago that Zappos, I went on a little Zappos tour about 3 weeks ago, Zappos just announced they're completely doing away with management structure. There are no bosses, no supervisors, no hierarchy. Okay, now, come back, pay attention, because I know that some of you, I've had this conversation, are going to be sitting out there for the rest of my talk going, that's not possible. How could they possibly do that? That's the way to kill a company. What are they thinking? But just open up a little bit to just understand that there is some movement in that direction. Whether that's right for your company or not right for your company, that's where things are starting to trend. Competing on analytics. Before I went into speaking full-time and consulting, that was about 7, 8 years ago, I ran my own business for 20 years. I know what it is like to lay awake at 2 o'clock in the morning going, okay, I've got $40,000 worth of payroll tomorrow and I've got $20,000 in the bank, you know. Can we have people pick their checks up after 3 and try to figure out how we're gonna float this? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, nobody wants to raise their hand on that one, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Those struggles that you have when you're a business owner. So we had a small call center, probably 2 or 3 people, and I decided at one point, hey, we should run some numbers on this. Let's kind of keep track of data and see how we're doing. What's our close rate? So we had 2 people in particular, principal people A and B, and what we discovered was, running the numbers, that person A, when they answered the phone, their close rate was 70% of people scheduling appointments. Person B, their close rate was 30%. And it dawned on me, we are playing Russian roulette with our phones, okay? Just based purely on who picks the phone up. How do we know that? Because of data, because of running the numbers. The new world order is ruled by data. Raise your hand if you saw the movie Moneyball. Anybody see the movie Moneyball? Okay, if you did not see Moneyball, that's one of your assignments. You've got to watch Moneyball. Moneyball is basically about how, like a brainiac, I think he was from MIT, used a spreadsheet to reinvent baseball. The old baseball system was, hey man, he's, you know, Jim, he's got a good old arm, let's put Jim in, let's, you know, he's on a streak right now, he's really on fire, let's put him in. He'll get that guy off third base and drive in that run. This guy came in and said, no, we're going to do it by the numbers because it's all about scoring. And so ultimately, Boston used that system 2 years later to go on to win a World Series. Picture a world where you walk in a restaurant and they hand you an electronic menu, and the electronic menu only lists things that you like and not anything that you're allergic to or don't like. Okay? You don't like mushrooms and beets? Okay, all those dishes are removed. Now you have your options. With data and analytics, the world is becoming much more predictive for you. Now, obviously, there's a scary side of that. By the way, we're all being spied on. You're being watched all the time. I read about, boy, this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, that we, on average, are filmed 400 times a day, okay? I bet you today it's in the thousands of times a day that we are filmed, and that's not counting all the selfies that some of you are taking. Anybody have a selfie stick? Okay. That was illustrative purposes. I do not have a selfie stick yet. Okay, So today, you can create 3D objects from a printer. We've got a workshop on that. Reach billions of people with the push of a button. Have mail order delivered within a few hours. Have you seen that Amazon? What's the thing it's called where they can deliver it within an hour to your home? Some dude pulls or gal pulls up in a truck and, hey, here you go. Actually, it's been announced that in Europe, if you buy the new Audi, you can give Amazon an electronic key to your car, and they will actually deliver to the trunk of your car in Europe if you buy a certain Audi. You can create, I saw this the other day, this is crazy. You can create operational circuit boards on a piece of paper using a pen. Draw out this circuit board, connect it up, and you can put a light on it and light. So it's crazy making, and we're barely getting started. That's just the tip of the surface. John Paul Getty said, in times of rapid change, experience could be your worst enemy. So think about what that meant in the past. You said, we're 35 years in business. We've got 40 years of experience. He's saying experience could be your worst enemy. Why? Because what got you here won't get you there. What got you here is not going to get you there. So the news is everything is different. Nothing is the same. And there are no markets that are untouched by the new reality that is our world. The good news is, look around the room. Every person, every company, every organization has the ability and tremendous capacity to reinvent and not only survive, but dominate. You didn't get where you are today because you're not smart about business. This is a room full of smart people about business. I have such huge respect for this room, for entrepreneurs, for people that have driven business forward, and you can do this. You do not have to be Blockbuster. You can absolutely be Netflix. First, you need to see not just what is coming, but what's actually here, and then you need a strategy, which I'm going to give you, a simple strategy. But first, let me clarify what I mean by reinvent. A lot of companies think they are reinventing when actually what they're doing is repackaging. Let me say this just real briefly about Exact Macola. Exact Macola over the last few years has been going through a true, legitimate reinvention. I've seen behind the scenes with some of that. They're not just repackaging. Hey, let's put some fancy colors up and do some things. They're really thinking about their business fundamentally different. We want to reinvent, not repackage. Repackaging is about image. Reinvention is about substance. Repackaging is about how customers perceive us. Reinvention is about how we perceive ourselves. Repackaging is about external change. Reinvention is about internal change. So let's talk about reinvention. Chances are your company was envisioned in a time when markets, delivery mechanisms, and even the need, desire for your core product or service were radically different. Raise your hand if you started your business, if your business has been in business for 20 years or longer. Raise your hand. Okay, congratulations, that's awesome. Longevity. If you started your business over 20 years ago, it was built when there were no smartphones, no cell phones really practically speak of. There was no Amazon. There was no Twitter. Here's a big one. There was no Google. What did we do before Google? How did we survive before Google? You remember those days. I remember leaving, by the way, I was born in Louisiana, grew up in Southeast Asia in Bangkok, Thailand. We went when I was 3.5 years old. My parents were missionaries, grew up there during the Vietnam War. Not your normal upbringing, but I actually graduated from the International School of Bangkok in 1980, okay, I can do the math, with Tim Geithner, the former Secretary of the Treasury. I don't know what the Geithners were doing over there, but graduated from high school. I remember when I left my house to go meet my friends down at Crown's Pizza on Soy 25 Sukhumvit, that once you left the house, you were unreachable. If there were a change of plans, there was no way literally to get a hold of you. 20 years ago, things were dramatically different. So the challenge, and you built your business in that time, the challenge is not to simply imagine the new world, it's to imagine how your company fits and flourishes in this new world, because it does and it can. So Alan Kay said, the best way to predict your future is to, somebody knows it, the best way to predict your future is to create it. I'm going to give you a 4 simple step process that's going to walk you through a reinvention. This is something that I've been doing with companies for a while. So the first one is you need to anticipate the future, what we've been talking about. All things are imagined before they are created. Look around this room. There's not a thing that exists in here, even the people that are sitting beside you, that didn't start as an idea, that didn't start in the brain of another person or in the mind of God, said, this is this substantive thing, this is this object, and we're going to build it, and we're going to make it a reality. John Sculley, the former CEO of Apple, said, the future belongs to those who see possibilities before they become obvious. When you see possibilities that everybody else has already seen, you're kind of behind the curve on that. So the ability to anticipate the future and see things before they become obvious. I was sitting having a conversation with the CEO of a very large benefits broker. It was just me and him in his office, and he was really upset, bemoaning, this was a number of years ago, bemoaning the fact that his competitor had come out with a new market. Now, we all know it to be commonplace these days, but it was this health focus within the workplace. And they had come out with this trendy new thing that was really catching steam, and it was just, stealing clients right and left, and they were just developing this thing. And he was upset because his staff had not jumped on board and come out with their own product. They were not aggressively pursuing that enough to come out with their own product to play catch up with this other company. So he's talking to me, and finally I looked at him and I said, Mr. CEO, I guess the question I would have if I were you is not how we can catch up with that other company, but what kind of company culture, what kind of people, what kind of company do we need to build so that we are the ones coming up with the idea in the first place? Ding, 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 ding. Bells and whistles started going off. And we set down a course to figure out how to build more innovation into his staff and into his company. By the way, I didn't say this. Tom Peters said this. I totally agree with him. Benchmarking is stupid. Benchmarking is utterly ridiculous. Because benchmarking is our way of looking at other companies and where they are now and trying to figure out how 5 years from now we can get to where they currently are so that they can already have surpassed that, and now we're still playing catch up again. You do not want to be benchmarking. You want to be establishing the future. Wayne Gretzky, anybody heard of Wayne Gretzky? You have any hockey fans in the room? Okay, yeah, we got a few. Wayne Gretzky, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, said, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. Where's the ball going to be? Where is the puck going to be? Netflix started delivering a service people didn't even know they wanted. And this is a key theme from products and companies and people that have been wildly successful. Henry Ford said, if we had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. He gave them something fundamentally different and helped save New York, by the way. Thank you, Henry Ford. The iPhone was one of these such inventions. Now, think about the way we used to think about cell phones. You had your cell phone, you would go to the store, you would buy no, you wouldn't buy your cell phone. You would pay minimal amount for it because you didn't want to pay for it. So you get this contract, they would send you out with your shiny new phone, and so you're not paying for it. And then this phone came in all sorts of varieties of colors and options and different things. I mean, we had flip phones and, stationary phones, and we had these little bitty, I wish I had one of these, but one of those little, you remember the little bitty phone that came out that you could actually make calls on, had one button, like, you could answer. I don't think you could hang up or something weird. But we had all these options, and you walked into the store, and there was this array of cell phones everywhere, all their colors and options and things. Apple came along and changed that game completely. And here's what they said. No, you're going to pay for your phone, and you're going to pay, at that time, an exorbitant amount for it. If you want one of these new shiny things, it's going to cost you $400 or $500. People were freaking out, like, what? I'm not paying $500 for a phone. Anybody still have a flip phone, by the way, in the audience? Okay, a few of you. So they came out with this new thing. It was a smartphone, and it became a deal changer. Now, guess what? Apple's playing catch up, right, as they're trying to stay ahead of that curve. They have successfully reinvented themselves with, after the iPhone came after the iPod, then the iPhone, then the iPad, and now the watch. So they are trying to stay ahead of that. But there were a few things about that new iPhone. I did not know that I wanted my text arranged by the people they came from instead of when they came in. And yet now that I have that, I will never go back. I didn't know that I wanted to be able to go and check the voicemails I wanted to check without having to go through 10 throwaway voicemails to get to the really important one. But now that I have that, I would never go back. They gave us something we never would ask for, and never would have known we wanted. So imagine the answer to this question. What do we want to deliver, to whom, and how? Our company, what do we want to deliver, to whom, and how? And that is the roadmap for your future. So if you're going to develop, and if you're going to anticipate, you need to develop your neuroplasticity. Okay, easy for me to say. Can anybody spell that? Neuroplasticity. Many companies that I see and work with are stuck in what I call terminal certainty. So let me ask you a question. Raise your hand if you are smarter than a fifth grader. I do not see a lot of hands in this room, okay? Come on, a few of you got to claim to be smarter than a fifth. Maybe not about the, some of the electronics today, but yes. Boy, y'all have been beat down. You don't even think you're smarter than a fifth grader? Sigmund Freud said this, what a distressing contrast, now this is Freud way back in the day, what a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. I've got some good news for you. Everybody in this room is smarter than a fifth grader. Kids are not smarter than we are. We just turned that part off. So it's a great experiment they did. They went into a kindergarten, they go up to a chalkboard and they draw this big dot on it. And they asked this group of kindergartners, what do you see? And the kindergartner said, I see a squashed bug. I see the top of a sombrero. I see a manhole. I see a wheel for a bicycle. I see a pizza pie. And they went on and on and on, and it was an endless amount of just creative things that they saw in this dot. They go into a high school, draw a big dot on the board, said, what do you see? What do you think the high school kid said? A dot on the board, okay? You go to an average kindergarten class and you ask them, hey, how many of you are artists? 90% of the room will raise their hand. I'm an artist. I love to draw. I love to color. You go to the high school group and you say, how many of you are an artist? And 2 or 3 kids who are majoring in art raise their hands and nobody else. Somewhere along the lines, we are teaching our kids to turn that thing off. So they actually did, when do you think is the greatest amount of intellectual growth in a human's life? When are you learning the fastest and learning the most, do you think? I don't know why I ask questions like that, because then I hear a bunch of murmuring and I don't know what y'all said. 2 to 5. Okay, 2 to 5, all right? Very, very young. The greatest amount of information is consumed because basically you're starting from zero, right? You don't know anything, and so you're learning all this. The average 3 to 5-year-old asks 350 questions a day. How many parents can give a testimony to that? Yes, absolutely. I've got 3 kids, by the way, 27, 25, and 18, and I know, I raise those little suckers. Look at just question, 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 question. By the time they get to high school, that drops to 15 questions a day. And by the time you get to be us, it goes to 5 questions a day. Is there a reason? There's a correlation between that being the fastest time that we're learning and how stuck in our ways that we get? Boy, if you want better answers, you need to ask better questions. Henry Ford said, why when I ask for a pair of hands, I gave him kudos earlier, I'm going to give you a, not so great. Henry Ford said, why when I ask for a pair of hands do I get a brain? Basically, what Ford was looking for to build those early vehicles was, you come to work, you stand here, you drill this hole here, don't move, just do exactly what I'm telling you. Hey, but what if we could try to no, do exactly what I tell you. I don't want you to think, I just want you to show up and do what I tell you. Now, think about your own company. Is that the case? Do people think? Contrast that later with the company that came along and produced for a long time a superior vehicle and really started to dominate the market, Toyota. Toyota gets on average 40 suggestions a year from every single employee. So is your company a classic Ford or a modern day Toyota? Do your people have ideas? What happens to those ideas? By the way, different business models. This is off script, but that large defense contractor, here was the way they vetted new ideas. You came up with something that you thought was life-changing, this is fantastic, this is awesome, and you had to be selected, and then you would go before this group of about 14 really hardened, sitting there looking at you like this as you walked in the room, and then you would present, your idea very sheepishly, and then they would proceed to take the next 30 minutes and pick it apart and talk about all the reasons why it wouldn't work. This is ridiculous. Out of all the 20 people that they lined up to walk in the room, they picked one lone survivor, the one that was the least bad idea, and they pursued that one, and they gave them a little bit of money to proceed. Google, complete contrast to that. They vet ideas late, not early. They go, hey, okay, you want to build a what? I don't know, seems kind of funky, but let's try it. And then if they get down the road and it's not being very successful, they go in and they cannibalize it and take whatever they can out of that idea and say, hey, nice try. Can't wait to hear another one. And then they move on. So I'm going to give you two people who anticipated the future. The first one is Clarence Saunders, who changed your life, and you probably don't even know his name. So Clarence Saunders worked at one of those, his story starts in a rural dry goods store, where he worked for a boss, and it was one of those stores, you go in, you get your licorice, you get your flour, you get your stuff, and pack it up, and they send you home. So Clarence had an idea a minute. He was one of those idea guys that was constantly coming up with new things. In fact, his boss got so disgusted with him that he told him at some point, if you come up with one more idea, I'm firing you. So for a bit there, Clarence kind of kept his mouth shut and thought, well, I need my job, I don't want to get fired. He goes out to lunch one day, and he's walking around, and he sees this big line outside of this new restaurant. He's like, what in the world is that about? He goes and checks it out. It's a completely new model. It's a reinvented model for the way we do restaurants. It's one of the early cafeterias. So think about going to lunch before. You had to sit down, wait on the wait person. They had to come. They would bring you stuff. And it was an ordeal, kind of a process. Well, now you go through. You see your food. You pick it out. Give me some of that and some of that. You can get as much or as little as you want. You go to the line. You pay. You go sit down. You start eating. Clarence thought this was phenomenal. What an amazing, new development. So he goes back and he says to his boss, hey, I've got an idea. And his boss says, you're fired. And Clarence says, you can't fire me because I quit. Clarence Saunders left that dry goods store and went and developed the very first modern day grocery store. Now, why he called it Piggly Wiggly, I don't know. If I were to go back in time from a branding standpoint, I might say, really, Piggly Wiggly? We could come up with something better than that, but no, Piggly Wiggly stood out. It changed everything about the way we shop. He built this serpentine. You had to go through the whole deal where you walk by the shelves, and now you're picking, someone else is not picking for you. Think about what had to be discovered or invented. They had to invent grocery carts. There were no grocery carts before that because you didn't need them. Branding largely came on the market because of that new grocery store. In the past, when you'd go to the dry goods store and say, hey, give me a cup of flour, they'd go dole it out, put it in a bag, hand it to you. But now you're standing there, we've got flour A and flour B, and the consumer's picking, and all of a sudden they had to start putting things on the label like new and improved, enriched, and figuring out that, red sells better than yellow or whatever the color schemes and things, and branding, voila, was invented. Kodak went from 140,000 employees back in the day to 25,000 employees almost overnight. I just checked before coming here last week. They're now down to 5,200 employees. What happened to Kodak? How many of you were big Kodak users growing up? I mean, Kodak, you buy your film, you bought Kodak products like crazy, and now they are pretty much just a disappearing company. Steve Sasson, hope I'm saying his name right, killed Kodak. You may not know that, but Steve Sasson killed Kodak. You want to hear the irony of it? Steve Sasson was an engineer working for Kodak back in the 70s when he invented for Kodak the first digital camera. Only to see later the digital camera completely put Kodak out of business. They had it right there in their backyard. It was sitting right under their thumbs, and they missed it. All right. So we got to develop our neuroplasticity. We got to get out of that, high school mode of it's a black dot on a board. Here's what I want you to do. Turn and tell someone really quickly your wildest kindergarten prediction for the future. Go. Wildest kindergarten prediction for the future. Okay, come on back. Somebody real quick have one they want to share. Somebody real quick have one they want to share. I'm sorry? Live on the moon. Excellent. Fly around like the Jetsons. We'll finally get the jetpacks. We were supposed to have those in 1980, and it's the 80s. Where's my rocket pack? It's a song. Okay, anybody else? Another one. Sorry? Growing computers. Interesting, okay? That's a good one, actually, on multiple levels. Okay, awesome. So you have it in you to think that way. We got to turn those wheels back on. The capacity to powerfully reimagine for a new reality is in every company. As you anticipate the new reality, now you're ready to move to the second step. So anticipate the future, and then you have to amputate, okay? Another A, you have to amputate. Remember, what got you here won't get you there. Raise your hand if you've moved in the last 5 years, 5 to 10 years, okay? Very mobile society now. Let me ask you this. When you get ready to move, are you running out and buying a bunch more stuff? Filling up your closets? Hey, these boxes just don't have enough stuff in them. What are you doing when you move? You're shedding off stuff like crazy, right? How many of you have had, when it comes to move day and you got some friends over and they're helping you out, and you're just giving them stuff that's, you know, take this Rolex, I don't want to have a box to put it in, you know, I'm just so tired of this old, just burn the whole lot. Let's just set the garage on fire, right? You're starting to realize just how much stuff you have, and you're getting rid of it, you're not increasing it. I moved about 3 years ago, I got rid of a ton of stuff. Guess what? 3 years later, I'm going, where did all this stuff come from? If you want to survive into the future, you need to stop being a hoarder. Okay, I've got to be careful how I say that word. You've got to stop hoarding bad ideas, inefficient processes, outdated policies, and even people who just do not and will not get it. Peter Drucker says, every organization has to prepare for the abandonment of everything it does. Now, there's a couple of every in there. Every organization has to prepare for the abandonment of everything it does. George Gilder says, in an era of accelerating transition, that's now, the rule of success will be self-cannibalization. So it's not what you keep, it's what you're willing to get rid of. What got you here will not get you there. Therefore, everything is on the table. If it will not work in the new world, it must go. Clunky processes, outdated ideas, bureaucratic systems, command and control management. Retired General Henri said, because I know you're thinking military, said command and control is dead. Low performers and poison, they are holding you back. Trust me. A professor of mine used to say, how much cow dung does it take to spoil a bowl of ice cream? Now, so I don't know about how for you, but it doesn't take much cow dung to spoil a bowl of ice cream. By the way, Netflix, wildly successful company. I checked their stock the other day because I actually own some of it. $575 a share that Netflix is trading for. You want to know one of the things out of their culture deck? We do not hire super intelligent jerks. It's too big a weight on our team, okay? So what do you need to get rid of? Jeff Jarvis, author of What Would Google Do, I mentioned earlier, said the wise course is to destroy your own models before some kid in a garage or in a Harvard or Stanford dorm room figures out a way to do it for you. I have companies go back and say, hey, build your company from scratch. You're now a $3 million, you're now a $500,000, you're a $500 million company. Build it from scratch, start from today. What would it look like if you just built it from the ground up? Because it's different when you're building a house, you know, a 10,000 square foot house, one room at a time. You'd probably organize it differently if you started from fresh. So if you want to eliminate nothing else, eliminate friction. I need a volunteer. You look like a fine volunteer that I prearranged just because of speed. Come on up here. Tell me your name. Sean Gamble. Let's hear for Sean. Now, Sean doesn't know this, but we're going to start a business. Let's come out here where everybody can see. So you ready to go in business together?
Sure.
Okay. I'm the doctor. Okay, so no. Come back. It gets better. This is our business, okay? Sean came up with this phenomenal business model, and the new business model is he's going to trade $1 bills for $5 bills, okay? For every time somebody gives him a $5 bill, he's going to give them a $1 bill back, which is a return on investment of what? Okay, math. Right. So that's our business. Are you ready? So customer one comes up. Hey, and guess what? The customers are really excited about doing this, okay? They're jazzed about doing this. Hey, man, here you go.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, okay, awesome. Wait, here's another one. Okay, awesome. Here you go.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, you want to go faster?
Sure.
I bet you do. I bet you do. Yes, a good business model. How fast do you want to make this transaction? Lightning fast. You want to make this really, really quickly, right? Okay, give me my money back. Just kidding. Let's hear it for Sean. Sean, I'll buy you a beer. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right? How much does this cost your average bar? It's a Blue Moon, by the way. It doesn't cost, not cost you, cost them. Probably 50 cents a dollar, depending on whether we're talking about a pour or whatever. Somebody told me the other day that some of that, you know, the wine that you're getting many times, they're paying $1.50 a bottle of wine. This is the bar business. I don't know about prices where you live, but in Dallas, you pay $5, sometimes $7 for a beer. If you're at the ballpark, you pay $572. That's the business. I'm going to walk up. I'm going to hand that bartender a $5. He's going to hand me a $1 back. Now, raise your hand if you've ever waited at a bar for longer than 20 minutes to get a drink, okay? Or ever waited anywhere to do it, because I got news for you. This is, and that drives me nuts, by the way, not because I can't get my beer fast enough, but I'm sitting over there calculating. If you would add one more bartender, you want to make this transaction really quickly. This is not just the bar business. This is every business. If you're profitable, which I assume you are, you wouldn't be sitting here, you're making money, you're trading less money for more money. So what do you want to do? You need to eliminate friction. How many of you have done this? Taking your jacket off. No. So you're at a store, I'm around shopping, and I find this great jacket, and I'm like, oh, hey, I really like that jacket. I think I'm going to buy that jacket. It actually, ironically, matches the pants that I'm even wearing. So you decide to buy that jacket, and you're like ready, and you go, and you get in line, and you're standing there, and you're waiting, and you're sort of waiting some more, and then you start checking your watch, and you got something you got to be at in a little bit, and you're waiting and waiting, and it's taking too long, and then they got problems with the register or something's going on, and finally you do this. And just walk off. How many of you have ever done that? Abandon a purchase. Yes. Why? Because it's not worth waiting on. Losing money. Eliminate friction. When I talk about friction, I'm talking about lines, paperwork, waiting, and anything that creates friction or makes it difficult for people to do business with you, again, including people. I don't want to check in. I don't want to check out. I don't want to wait in line. I don't want to wait. Now you're saying, oh, you know, there was actually a guy that went into his doctor and said, Doc, I'm really concerned. Over the last few weeks, I've been shrinking at a pretty rapid rate. And the doctor goes, hey, listen, calm down. You're just going to have to learn to be a little patient. A little patient, diminutive. Okay. That is not 2015. People are becoming increasingly impatient, and we can rage against that machine all we want and say, you need to learn to be more patient. But the reality is, people don't want to wait on things. I'm going to be talking about wowing customer service tomorrow. Impressive customer service is not how long I'm on the phone with you. In fact, I probably don't even want to be on the phone, but if I am on the phone, I don't want to be on the phone for 20 minutes answering questions and doing things. Raise your hand if you use Amazon. Raise your hand. Look around the room. How many people use Amazon? Amazon is king at eliminating friction. They've come up with systems and methodologies. Google figured out years ago that 30% of people actually go through an online transaction. Why? Because when it got to the point where I've got to go get my credit card, oh, it's in the other room, they would get all ready, they would get to the checkout, and then they wouldn't go through with the transaction. Only 30% were kind of following through. Amazon solved that problem. They came out with this buy now with one click. I mean, I'm a madman on Amazon. I travel quite a bit. I'm an old guy. I still buy CDs. I still buy books, paper books. And so I come home and it looks like Christmas is waiting outside my doorstep, right? Because they delivered all these little packages, not expensive, but just kind of fun stuff. Now I order coffee, I order paper towels, I order hair product. If you can imagine, I use that stuff. But Amazon is king at eliminating friction. They make it easy to return stuff, they make it easy to buy stuff, and that's why the majority of this room uses them. So think about one area of friction that you are going to eliminate. Write it down right now. Think about your own business. What is one area of friction that you are going to seek to eliminate over the coming months? Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. Make it easy for people to do business with you. Anticipate a new reality. Amputate things you don't need. Then you want to align your people with your passion. They did a study with over 23,000 workers, managers, and executives, and what they determined was only 37% said that they have a clear understanding of what their organization is trying to achieve and why. Only 37%. Your average engagement rate, according to a Gallup poll, at your typical U.S. company is 30%, 30% engagement. That means you've got a guitar with 2 strings. You're operating with 2 cylinders out of a 6-cylinder car. You've got, you go on and on. You've got 1 leg on a 3-legged stool. You're operating with a third of your workforce because that's the level of people that are actually engaged. Many company cultures reinforce the lack of understanding and engagement by having cultures that produce boredom, underperformance, and apathy. In fact, a lot of companies have 2 cultures. The first one's the stated culture. How do you know the stated culture of a company? Where do you see it? It's in their mission statement, it's on the walls, it's got their values, and then you've got the hidden culture, right? And that's what's really going on. That's what, when you go in and you start talking to people behind the scenes, hey, but you guys believe that, you think we really operate that way? The bigger the gap between your hidden culture and your stated culture, the less engaged your people are going to be because they get bored with it. I'm actually writing a book called Beached Whale that came out of that working with a large defense contractor because there was such a gap between what they said they were doing and what they were actually doing. Here's one of the indicators you're a beached whale company. Go home and try this. If you walk around and every single cubicle has a Dilbert cartoon posted outside of it, okay? They're trying to tell you something. Close that gap. In the highly competitive Shark Tank that is today's market, there's simply no room for the levels of disengagement that we have been tolerating in the past. Has to go away. In 1996, there were 1,000 IPOs issued, the largest amount in the history of Wall Street. And the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship studied all 1,000 of them. Only 38% of those 1,000 IPOs survived into the 10-year anniversary. Her team studied the survivors, trying to find out, hey, what was the factor? Was it management structure? Was it their branding and their marketing? Was it the quality of their products? And ultimately, what it boiled down to was one thing. And the higher this was, the more sustainable the company was. A sense of urgency and intensity among the employees. Their conclusion, in the long run, the only thing that matters is people. Are you taking care of your people? Do you want to reinvent? Provide a place for passion and then tolerate nothing else. So my business partner, Kevin Burgess, was speaking at a company, and he's talking, and he is amazed by the enthusiasm that he sees from every single employee. So he goes to the CEO, and he's like, hey, how in the world do you get every employee to demonstrate so much passion so consistently? The CEO's response, we will not employ anyone who doesn't. It was the benchmark. It was the accepted standard. All right, so you're going to anticipate the future. You're going to amputate everything that you can that you don't need. You're going to align your people, and then last but not least, you're going to accelerate. Klaus Schwab, difficult to say, said that in the new world, it's not the big fish which eats the small fish, it's the fast fish which eats the slow fish. Things are unfolding and evolving at a rapid pace. Did you see earlier when Allison was talking about on the plane, what was she saying? Faster, faster, faster. Let's do it again. Let's do it even faster. Are you doing that in your business? Futurist Alvin Toffler said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. To enter the modern freeway at a snail's pace is to be crushed or bumped off the road. Traditional decision-making systems are often bureaucratic and redundant, and we have to do away with those if we're going to be successful in the future. There's a great story I read. They were trying to buy some place in South America. They were trying to buy rice so that they could raise a particular, grow a particular crop down there, and there were two people that they had to, two different factions they had to deal with, and they had to get from one or the other. So it was a big company. They got their attorneys involved, and they're looking at both plots and trying to figure out which is going to be more successful and who do they want to do business with and so forth. Meanwhile, the little small company came in. You know what they did? They bought both of them. They licensed with both of them. Game over. So there's an apocryphal story about Columbus' voyage to the New World. The story goes that a day came when the ships dropped anchor, and Columbus brought the crews from the Nina and the Pinta over to the Santa Maria. And he got them all there on the ship, and he got them on deck, and he said this: "We've sailed to the end of the charted world. If we sail past this point, we're sailing off the map into the unknown." It's a time of decision. Too many companies embarking on a so-called reinvention simply relaunch into the same pond they have been becalmed in for too long. Too many look at the unknown horizon and they let fear set in and they refuse to sail on. Well, understand this. Columbus had an option that we do not have. Columbus had the option of going home, going back to the old world. There was a world he could return to. Our choice is to sail off the map and chart the new world, or die where we are, because there is no going back. There is no, with the kind of shifts that we're going through, there is no going back. So anticipate, amputate, align, accelerate, dare to reinvent. You'll discover a new world, and will likely not just discover it, but actually help to shape it. Dare to do. Thank you. Let's give it up for Daren Martin. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right, so I just swapped hats. I'm also your MC for the next couple of days, so I'm back out here to make some announcements, all right? Like, dude, why is he coming back? What, is he going to do an encore? What is happening here? Okay, so my role is to help some of that, keep some of that stuff kind of moving. So I am really excited to be here. I really got to know Exact Macola a number of months ago and just dealing with Allison and the team, and it's been a really fun adventure, and I have been stoked about getting to this moment. So from what I've seen on the mobile app, everyone is engaged. If you have not done it yet, download the app. You're going to be able to see pictures, post things, connect with other people. There's a QR code on the back of the conference guide if you want to use that, or you can follow the instructions and go to it via the web. Thank you to the folks at Algorithm for hosting the welcome reception. How many of you had a great time last night at the welcome reception? Wow, the food was great. My favorites were the shrimp and the ribs, and I ate them Texas style with my hands. But yeah, Algorithm did a great job. I actually got to meet a couple of people from their company, and I think they bought me a beer. Well, I think they bought all my beers, as it turns out. So we're going to take a break in the Solution Center. You want to visit this? That's right here to the right. You want to visit the sponsor booth, see how they can help extend your Exact Macola solution. We will meet back here in the Royal Palm Ballroom at 11:45 to hear Dan Griffin. He's going to be sharing new features in Exact Macola 10, questions been on a lot of your minds, and what they can do for your business. So quick break right next door. Thank you.